Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome back to another episode of the Zcrew podcast. And today, it is Thursday, July 31st, 2025. A big day today, guys. Of course, you guys know by now. Today is the official MLB trade deadline day. Lots of moves in this morning already. Probably expecting more moves to come in throughout the afternoon, guys. And of course, tonight is the kickoff for the NFL preseason. Yes, the Hall of Fame game tonight. From Canton, Ohio, we got the Los Angeles Chargers and the Detroit Lions. Now, there are some familiar quarterbacks in this game tonight. We do expect to see a good amount of Trey Lance for the Los Angeles Chargers, and for the Detroit Lions, it is expected that third-year quarterback Hendon Hooker out of Tennessee is expected to get the start for the Detroit Lions tonight. So very exciting to see some of these quarterbacks with a lot of hype, who had a lot of hype coming out of the draft a couple years ago. And also, of course, guys, as I mentioned before, today is the MLB trade deadline. There have been some moves today. I'd say probably the craziest move so far is the Padres traded for Mason Miller and J.P. Sears, and they actually ended up giving up their number 3 overall prospect in all of baseball to the A's. So pretty good there. You see the O's have traded away a few guys, not really the guys expected, of course. There is still plenty of time today. I think you got about 5 hours left, but you see guys like Cedric Mullins, Ryan O'Hearn, Charlie Morton, these guys are still with us, so as of now, have not traded him. We did trade Ramon Urias to the Houston Astros, as well as Andrew Kittredge to the Chicago Cubs, and we also acquired a 17-year-old infielding prospect from the Chicago Cubs. So, obviously a very young player, but exciting. Good for the O's to get some kind of return on their veterans. But without further ado, guys, today is a deep dive of the Carolina Panthers, guys. A very interesting young team. Now, if you guys recall, last season was very interesting for the Panthers. It was year one for head coach Dave Canales. Had a bit of an interesting start to his tenure as head coach, as the team started 0-2 after some very tough losses. They actually ended up benching, at that time, second-year quarterback Bryce Young, which at the time was very surprising because, again, benching Bryce Young, people weren't sure what that was going to do for his confidence. Obviously it's a shot at the heart, you're not the guy anymore. They ended up going with Andy Dalton after that for the final 7 or 8 games in a row. They actually had Andy Dalton as their quarterback. But again, once we did see the Panthers bring Bryce Young back in, once he became a starter again, I believe it was week 10, something like that. He looked very good, absolutely amazing. He almost looked like a completely different player when he came back from his benching. And if you guys remember, the Panthers played some very, very tight games at the end of last season. Of course, one against the Eagles where the Panthers had a legit shot to win that game. They literally had a chance to win that game. They played the Eagles very tight. Also played the Kansas City Chiefs. Yes, the Chiefs, they played them very tight at the end of last season. Again, Bryce Young looked like a complete different player last year. So I think if you're a Carolina Panthers fan, you are very excited to see Bryce Young in year 3. A full year of him being the starter again this year, you hope. But again, I think it took some very, very important strides last season. Of course, he did have a very rough rookie season for the Panthers. Unfortunately for them, they did not get the number 1 pick. Of course, that ended up being with Chicago Bears, who took Caleb Williams. But without further ado, guys, let's talk about the Panthers for the 2025 season, guys. Now, of course, we are entering year 2 with Dave Canales as their head coach. And, of course, year 3 of Bryce Young. Now, last season, the main issue for the Panthers was their defense. Of course, yes, their defense was historically bad last season. Honestly, gave them no chance. It didn't matter what their offense was able to do because the defense was so terrible. Could not get any stops. Had holes all over the defense. Now, of course, this season, you have to think that's going to be a huge, place of emphasis, to try to improve. And they started this offseason by extending their standout cornerback, J.C. Horn, gave him a nice long-term extension, got him locked up for the future. Very exciting. And also, guys, they had a very, very interesting and exciting draft, if you ask me. They were able to draft rookie Tet McMillan at pick number 8, a wide receiver out of Arizona. I love this guy. This guy's got great potential. I think they drafted him with the intent of him becoming their new wide receiver 1. Get Bryce Young, his top guy, an absolute stud on the outside. Deep ball threat, jump ball threat, great addition for the Panthers. Now, people might have think they overpicked him a little bit, but I think it's a great fit for the offense. Bryce Young desperately needed the big-time wide receiver 1, and I think he got it with Tet McMillan out of Arizona. And, of course, they also drafted edge rusher Nick Scorton out of Texas A&M in the second round, and he's somebody that I thought would have been a first-round talent. Again, he was able to fall to Carolina in the second round, and they were able to scoop him up there. So you kind of pair him on the defensive line with Derek Brown, who's probably their best player on defense. Besides J.C. Horn, Derek Brown's an absolute stud up the middle, great run stuffer. But you add rookie Nick Scroton into that mix, I think that's going to be a great addition for their defensive line. They also signed free agent safety from the Raiders, Trayvon Merrick, a former first-round pick who's still got a lot of upside, very much potential, and I think he'll help their potential secondary, of course, which is one of their main weaknesses on their team was obviously their secondary, of course. But I think he should definitely help their desperate secondary. They also signed running back Rico Dowell from the Dallas Cowboys to pair him with Chuba Hubbard, as well as adding to their wide receiver room when they added wide receiver Hunter Renfrow. Welcome back to the NFL, Hunter Renfrow. I think this guy is an absolute stud. One of the sneakiest players in fantasy, but of course, and overall, this guy's great talent. And they were able to scoop him up on a cheap 1 or 2 year deal to bring him back, so that's very exciting, of course. Add another veteran in the wide receiver room next to Adam Thielen for Bryce Young. And there's also one more player they drafted I want to mention. They were also able to draft in the 4th round running back Trevor Etienne, of course, the brother of Travis Etienne out of Georgia. Now, I think he's also going to be a great potential fit to go next to Chuba Hubbard at running back, potentially form a two-headed monster. And of course, guys, I really think Bryce Young, the only thing with this team, if they can improve their offensive line a little bit, I kind of worry about that. Of course, you guys know Bryce Young's a bit of a smaller, no disrespect, Bryce, a smaller quarterback, so he obviously needs more time and needs to be able to step up in the pocket and, kind of see downfield, see over his lineman, right? So he needs a chance to really step up in the pocket and make good throws outside of the numbers. He could do that by obviously having the best protection possible. So that's got to be key for Carolina. If you can protect Bryce Young, I think the sky's the limit for this guy and this offense. I expect this offense to be very explosive, of course. Guys, you got Xavier Legette year 2. I love Xavier Legette. I think this guy's an absolute stud as well. You pair him next to, like I said earlier, Tet McMillan, and you add Adam Thielen to that mix as well as Hunter Renfrow. You got a sneaky good wide receiver room there. Also got some pretty good tight ends in Tommy Tremble, and last year they drafted Jatavion Sanders out of Texas, another guy I love. So I think they have a really good skill group of guys. As well, of course, you got Chuba Hubbard and Trevor Etienne as well as Rico Dowell. Of course, guys, the only thing with Carolina is their defense. If they can really get their defense to play good and, stop somebody, then I think the Carolina Panthers have a legit shot to be a very sneaky good team this season, guys. Now, before I give my Carolina Panthers record prediction, guys, just want you to know I am very high on this team. I think they're potentially going to be the most surprising team of this season, guys. So, with that being said, I have the Carolina Panthers in 2025 finishing the season, yes, 10-7, and good enough for second place in the NFC South and good enough for a final wild card spot. Now, of course, this is, bearing no injuries, and if Carolina can get the proper protection and keep Bryce Young protected, I think this team could be absolutely amazing, bro, especially their offense. It has the potential to be very, very talented and could score a lot of points. So, again, if their defense can just hold somebody and get some stops, I think this team can have a very successful season in a very weak, especially an interesting division. Of course, you got the Bucs and the Falcons, who are probably going to be very good. The Panthers did play both of these teams pretty tight last season. Of course, division matchups. Teams are very familiar with one another, so I do see them winning some of those games against Tampa Bay and, of course, New Orleans as well as Atlanta. So, again, I see them finishing the year 10-7, good enough for a playoff spot. So, guys, thanks for watching today's video. Please don't think I'm crazy. Again, I'm really high on Bryce Young. Of course, today, the trade deadline have not been any crazy trades. Like I guess you could say Shane Bieber to from the Guardians to the Blue Jays is pretty interesting there. The Blue Jays get an ace pitcher when he's healthy. He's not pitched all season, so again, kind of risky for the Blue Jays, but I think it's a good move for them. And we're going to stay tuned for the O's, see if Cedric Mullins and O'Hearn maybe stay on our team, hopefully. But again, guys, thanks for watching. Stay tuned for more, and this has been an episode of the Zcrew Podcast.